Welcome to the Economist in Your Ear podcast. So here's something to think about. In an entertainment world often known for playing it safe, for pretty traditional humor, how does a 50-year-old comedian from a rural village suddenly become a huge star, especially when she's talking about divorce, about separation, about caregiving?
Yeah, it's a really striking question.
And maybe even more, what does her success, this kind of meteoric rise, tell us about where the real social conversations, the candid ones, are actually taking place in China today?
It's a fascinating case, honestly, because the person we're talking about, Director Fang, she completely breaks the mold for modern Chinese stardom. She's from a village near central Linyi.
Right.
And her comedy, it's all rooted in her life. Midlife changes, being a mother, the complexities, the real difficulties of family life. And that seems to be hitting a nerve, especially with women audiences.
And that stage name, Director Fang, it's brilliant, isn't it? It's like she's leaning into this witty nod to being the, quote, head of the village information center.
Exactly. It's self-aware. It says, look, I'm the one who hears everything, the local gossip, but with this really sharp edge. It grounds her comedy immediately in the everyday, but it's smart.
So our aim here isn't just to tell her story. We really want to unpack what's driving this. What are the factors, the structures that are fueling her popularity?
Yeah, we need to look at how stand-up itself is changing, how it's becoming this, well, carefully managed space, right? A kind of social release valve for tricky conversations.
A way to talk about things without, perhaps, crossing those official red lines.
Precisely. Providing that catharsis, that outlet, but within certain boundaries.
Okay, so let's start with her profile, because it's so unusual. She's really a departure from the typical comic you might see in a club.
Totally. Usually you're thinking younger, probably urban, maybe grew up online. But Director Fang, she's older, she's rural, she's been a migrant worker, a homemaker.
And her material comes directly from that life experience.
Absolutely. Navigating marriage, facing separation, the day-to-day grind of looking after family. That lived reality is her source of power.
And that just broadens the whole picture, doesn't it? Who gets to be on stage? And maybe more importantly, who in the audience feels like, yes, that's me. I feel seen.
It really does, especially when you compare it to the more traditional Chinese comedy forms. You know, things like Zhang Sheng.
The classic comic dialogue.
Right, or Aaron Swan, that musical double act. They often feel quite male-dominated, both in who performs and the kind of jokes they tell. Lots of wordplay, traditional structures, sometimes a clear moral lesson at the end.
Yeah, they can feel a bit dated, maybe.
Yeah.
Or just not suited for deep, messy, personal stuff.
Exactly. Stand-up, particularly the club format we see now, is built differently. It's confessional. It thrives on vulnerability.
So it's almost perfectly designed for these kinds of midlife stories, the nitty-gritty domestic details that Director Fang turns into comedy gold.
And that format shift is crucial. It lets her tackle really sensitive things like, the stigma around divorce, which can be incredibly intense, especially in rural areas where family honor and structure are so central.
Which brings us to this idea of the club itself, this sort of safe interior you mentioned that seems to allow for this level of candor. Can you walk us through how that actually works?
Well, it's about managing risk, really. The clubs are generally very strict. No recording allowed. Please put your phones away.
Okay.
And that rule does two things. First, obviously it protects the comedian's material from going viral in a way they didn't intend, maybe attracting the wrong kind of attention, regulatory attention.
It keeps it contained.
But second, it creates this unspoken agreement with the performer. It's like saying, okay, since this conversation stays in this room, you can probably push the boundaries a bit more.
Ah, I see. So in exchange for the audience keeping quiet, the comic feels safer getting really personal, really candid.
Exactly. It creates this temporary bubble almost where difficult subjects can be aired. It feels necessary for these topics.
But the audience isn't just sitting there quietly, are they? They're part of this equation too. They're driving the demand for this kind of comedy.
Oh, absolutely. We're seeing a huge shift. Women aren't just performing more, though they are. Apparently over a third of performers in major shows now, which is nearly double what it was 5 years back.
Wow, that's a big jump.
It is. But they're also shaping the market from the audience side. Women make up a huge share of the ticket buyers. You often see mothers and daughters coming to shows together.
Interesting. So they're voting with their wallets, essentially.
Pretty much. And the material that sells out, the stuff that generates buzz, it's overwhelmingly focused on relationships, household dynamics, money pressures, navigating social expectations, all often told from a woman's viewpoint.
So Director Fang isn't just being funny. She's tapping into these core really urgent social issues with incredible openness, talking about difficult past marriage, the struggle to actually get separated.
Yes, and the humor works because it reflects these massive societal shifts that everyone in the room recognizes, at least implicitly.
You mean like the statistics we see?
Exactly. The jokes don't exist in a vacuum. They land because, well, look at the numbers. Marriage registrations in China have plummeted. They hit about 6.1 million in 2024, which is apparently the lowest figure since 1980.
That's staggering.
It provides this really stark backdrop. Suddenly, jokes about marriage itself, the pressure to get married, the social cost of divorce, they feel incredibly relevant and urgent.
And a real power seems to be in the specificity. Let's talk about that corgi metaphor bit you mentioned.
Yeah.
That's gone pretty viral, hasn't it?
It has. It's a brilliant example of using humor to talk about something quite painful. She uses this image of a corgi, low to the ground, always underfoot, to describe a past relationship that was physically there, constantly present, but ultimately unhelpful, non-communicative, kind of useless when you actually needed support.
Okay, I can picture that.
So by framing her past relationship, the messy process of separating, the judgment from the community, all through this slightly absurd, very domestic image, she lets the audience laugh at the ridiculousness hiding within a really difficult, painful situation.
And it connects to real-world burdens too, right? Like negotiating finances, maybe even the Kaylee, the traditional bride price.
Oh, for sure. That system, the Kaylee, is a huge source of tension and public debate. Director Fang takes these heavy, potentially explosive topics and puts them on stage using this relatable, funny shorthand. It diffuses the tension while acknowledging the reality.
That's quite a skill. But like you said, it's also potentially risky territory. Things can flare up quickly. We saw that back in 2021, didn't we? With the comedian Yang Li.
Right, the joke about ordinary men and their, shall we say, sometimes misplaced confidence, that single joke just ignited a firestorm.
Huge reaction both ways.
Massive support from lots of women, but also intense criticism. It really showed how even jokes told inside a club can instantly tap into these much wider, very polarized debates about gender roles and expectations once they hit the public internet.
Okay, so if the demand is clearly there, and the content is obviously striking a chord, even if it's controversial, why is this type of comedy, this candid expansion, being, well, not just tolerated, but maybe even gently encouraged in some ways?
I think the primary answer is economic. The authorities, they're actually quite keen to see the live entertainment sector grow.
You mean clubs, tours, people traveling for shows?
Exactly. It boosts domestic consumption, gets people spending money locally, and crucially, this isn't just about the big coastal cities anymore.
Right. It's about selling tickets in those Tier 3 and Tier 4 cities too, the smaller, non-mega cities.
Precisely. When you see sellout shows in places like Linyi itself or other provincial cities, that signals a really significant, desirable domestic economic activity. So letting comedians be genuinely funny about personal life, about non-political stuff, that aligns pretty well with the goal of boosting consumption.
It feeds the economy.
It does, and that connects to this release valve idea we talked about.
Right.
Look, personal stories about marriage problems, stress at work, annoying relatives, people pay good money to laugh together about these shared struggles. It offers real catharsis, real social value in that moment.
And it keeps the conversation away from more sensitive areas.
Generally, yes. It steers clear of critiques of the system, security issues, military topics. Those things remain absolutely off limits. It's a way for people to vent frustrations about life without directly challenging the political structure.
So that line, personal commentary versus systemic critique, that seems to be the absolute core of how this space is managed, especially after that incident in 2023.
Oh yeah, the joke referencing a military slogan. That comedian faced serious consequences, and the whole industry took note. It reinforced the need for caution.
So the clubs themselves are managing this risk now.
Very much so. They have, practices for vetting content, mostly self-regulation, internal reviews, and they are strict about enforcing those no recording rules. It's all about lowering the regulatory risk profile.
But there's a nuance here, isn't there? Because officials have sometimes warned against, I think the phrase was, gender antagonism.
That's right.
Yet someone like Director Fang, who is talking very directly about her own experiences with separation, with difficult family dynamics, she seems to be getting massive approval, both from audiences and professionally.
And that's the key, I think. It's the personal focus. The space for discussion has arguably widened, but it definitely hasn't become boundaryless. She talks about her marriage, her effort to separate, her relationship with her mother.
Not marriage in general or divorce policy.
Exactly. The moment a comic starts making broad critiques, talking about systemic issues, criticizing policy, or naming specific official actions, that protective bubble just vanishes. The safety lies in sticking to individual struggle, individual experience.
Okay, so if Director Fang's success is kind of a test case, a proof of concept for this kind of carefully managed comedy expanding into new audiences, what should we be looking for? What are the signs that this change is really sticking, that it's becoming truly mainstream and durable?
Well, I think there are a few key markers. First, keep watching that tour geography. Is she, and are others like her, continuing to sell out shows consistently in those Tier 3, Tier 4 cities? That proves the appeal is broad and deep, not just a fleeting urban trend.
Makes sense. What else?
Second, look at brand partnerships. Do major mainstream advertisers align themselves with this kind of family and lifestyle content, even when it touches on messy, difficult themes? Or do they get nervous and pull back the moment there's any online controversy? Advertiser confidence is a big signal.
And the performers themselves, the pipeline.
That's the third crucial piece. Is the industry actively seeking out, developing, and promoting talent among women who are, say, 35 and older? Or is the focus still primarily on recruiting 20-somethings for the open mics?
So if they start seeing older women, women with Director Fang's kind of life experience as a core demographic for future stars, not just a current anomaly,
then that signals real structural change in how the industry sees its audience and its performers.
it really feels like Director Fang's story shows where the biggest growth potential might be for Chinese comedy right now.
I think so. It's in digging into ordinary life with incredible specificity, honesty, and empathy, especially for groups who haven't always seen their lives reflected on stage, like older, rural women.
Her success really demonstrates that audiences are hungry for that reflection. They want to see their own complex, sometimes difficult realities acknowledged and, well, maybe even laughed about.
That sense of recognition of shared experience, even shared hardship, that's a powerful driver. It creates cultural relevance, and it drives consumption.
So this very specific, very personal humor is definitely part of a larger social conversation. But maybe that leaves us with one final kind of provocative thought.
Which is?
Well, if personal hardship, like struggling to get a separation or dealing with the pressures of the Cali system, if that becomes the raw material for comedy that's acceptable precisely because it's personal and consumption-friendly, are these jokes actually paving the way for real social change? Or are they perhaps just a very effective, very profitable, safe container for letting off steam? Just catharsis.
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Is it transformation or just tension release?
Something for us all to think about. Thanks for listening. Follow us for daily insights into world affairs, and don't forget to like, comment, and share.